We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. Ryan Mitchell never thought betrayal would come disguised in soft laughter and candlelit dinners. To anyone watching from the outside, his marriage to Julia looked picture perfect, an American dream built in the suburbs. He was 32, a driven marketing strategist, disciplined in his routines, steady in his values. Julia, his wife of 3 years, was a graphic designer who always seemed to have that effortless grace, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and shift the air without even trying. Their evenings were sacred to him. Ryan worked hard, but he made it a point to be home by 6. They would cook together, Julia sprinkling spices into simmering pans while Ryan poured wine. After dinner, they'd sit on the couch, sharing stories about work, or sometimes just holding hands in silence. To Ryan, these were the moments that defined happiness. But beneath Julia's calm smile lived a secret. She had always carried scars from her past, an ex who manipulated and belittled her. When Ryan came along, she called him her safe place. She praised his patience, his steady love, his loyalty. What Ryan never realized was that her hunger for validation never truly died. She thrived on attention, on being desired by more than just one man. And so, when she joined a new gym and met Trevor, a tall, charming trainer with quick jokes and a dangerous smile, her loyalty began to unravel. It started innocently, workouts, encouragement, small talk. But soon, Ryan noticed Julia getting home later, cheeks flushed, claiming she stayed for extra cardio. He dismissed it, convincing himself she was simply committed to her health goals. Ryan's life was routine. He rose at 6:30 a.m., jogged the quiet neighborhood streets, showered, and left for work with a thermos of black coffee. He buried himself in his projects, always striving to climb higher. His dreams weren't grandiose. He just wanted a stable life, maybe kids in a couple of years, a family built on love and security. Julia often said she wanted the same. What Ryan didn't know was that Julia's late-night projects weren't design deadlines. They were stolen hours with Trevor. She told herself it wasn't serious, that it was just fun, a way to feel alive again. But fun has a way of spilling into the places it doesn't belong. The discovery came like lightning, sudden, violent, unforgettable. One Tuesday afternoon, Ryan had an important presentation at work. He realized, last minute, that he had left his flash drive at home. It wasn't unusual. He often worked on slides late at night in his home office. Without calling Julia, he drove back, certain she would be painting or working on her laptop in the living room. But as he pulled onto his street, his heart jolted. A black SUV he didn't recognize sat directly in front of their house. Ryan parked down the block, a knot tightening in his chest. He walked toward the door, keys in hand, trying to push away the unease. Maybe Julia had a friend over. Maybe it was a delivery. Maybe. The second the door opened, every illusion shattered. Julia was tangled on the couch with Trevor, their clothes half scattered across the floor, her laughter muffled against his mouth. Ryan froze, the flash drive completely forgotten in his pocket. Time slowed, the sound of his heartbeat roaring in his ears as the life he thought he had disintegrated before him. Julia's eyes widened when she finally noticed him. Ryan, wait, it's not what it looks like. Her words were shards of glass in the air. Trevor scrambled to grab his shirt, muttering excuses Ryan couldn't even process. Ryan said nothing, not a word. He walked past them, into his office, retrieved the flash drive, and left the house without looking back. His silence was louder than any explosion of rage could have been. At that moment, Julia thought she'd gotten away with it, that maybe Ryan's quietness meant forgiveness could still be won. She had no idea the storm he was already planning, one that would dismantle her carefully hidden lies piece by piece. Ryan drove aimlessly after leaving the house, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't blast the radio or scream into the night. He couldn't. The silence was deafening, each tick of the turn's signal echoing the truth he had just witnessed. His wife, the woman who once whispered promises of forever, had chosen someone else right under his roof. By the time he reached the office parking lot, the clock was already cutting close to his meeting. He forced himself inside, grabbed water, and stood in front of the conference room full of expectant faces. The charts he'd prepared looked sharp. His voice came out steady, but inside, he was crumbling. Every time he blinked, he saw Julia's flushed face, Trevor's smirk, the discarded clothing. He delivered the presentation like a man on autopilot. His boss, Richard, a seasoned professional with silver at his temples and an instinct for reading people, watched him closely. Richard didn't ask anything in front of the clients, but when the meeting ended, his eyes narrowed. Later that evening, when the office had emptied out, Richard found Ryan still sitting at his desk, staring blankly at spreadsheets. "Ryan," Richard said firmly, "pack up. You're coming with me." Ryan obeyed without protest. Minutes later, they were seated in the quiet corner of a bar, 2 glasses between them. The moment Richard asked, "What happened?" Ryan's composure cracked. He told everything. How he'd gone home, the SUV, Julia with Trevor on the couch, her frantic excuses. "I thought we were solid," Ryan muttered, his voice low, raw. "I gave her everything. Time, loyalty, respect. I never missed dinner, never left her guessing where I was. And she does this with someone who probably can't even spell commitment." Richard listened, not interrupting. When Ryan's words tumbled into silence, Richard finally leaned forward. "She showed you who she is, Ryan. Believe it. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Those words stuck. That night, Ryan returned home late. Julia sat in the living room, mascara streaked down her cheeks, rehearsed apologies spilling from her lips the second he walked in. "It wasn't serious, Ryan. It was just one mistake. Please, you mean everything to me. I don't want to lose you over something that didn't mean anything." Ryan stood silently in the doorway, his jaw tight. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He didn't even answer. He walked upstairs and locked himself in the guest room. That silence was his first weapon. Over the next few days, Julia tried everything. She left notes in his lunch bag, texted paragraphs begging for forgiveness, cooked his favorite meals. Ryan ignored it all. He stuck to his routines, early jogs, long work hours, late returns home, but his mind wasn't lost. It was sharpening. He started noticing details. Julia's unlocked phone buzzing with Trevor's messages, receipts from lunches she had claimed were work meetings, gym bags packed with new lingerie that certainly wasn't for treadmill runs. Each detail was fuel, and Ryan documented it all. Photos, timestamps, screenshots. He wasn't going to confront her blindly. He was building a case, piece by piece, until Julia's lies collapsed under their own weight. And beneath the strategy, the hurt remained. Nights in the guest room, Ryan would sit at the edge of the bed, staring into the dark. He thought of the mornings he used to bring her coffee, the way she used to kiss him on the porch before work, the whispered forever under starlight. All of it now felt like an elaborate illusion, a play stage for his benefit while the real Julia hid behind the curtain. But grief began to harden into something else, resolve. One evening, Richard called to check in. "You have 2 paths, Ryan," he said. "You can either let her drag you into the mud, or you can outsmart her, protect yourself, and make sure she never forgets what she threw away. Which man do you want to be?" Ryan's answer came in a whisper, but carried the weight of steel. The latter. Julia, meanwhile, grew restless. His coldness unnerved her. She had expected rage, maybe tears, but this silence, this controlled distance, terrified her more than any screaming match could. She tried to spark conversations at breakfast, but Ryan responded with clipped nods. She reached for his arm once, but he pulled back without a word. The wall between them grew taller with every passing day, and Julia began to feel the life she'd taken for granted slipping from her grasp. Yet even then, she didn't stop contacting Trevor. Ryan knew he had the messages saved. She kept feeding her ego with stolen affection, unaware that every word was being logged, every betrayal neatly filed. Ryan was no longer the wounded husband staggering under betrayal. He was a man plotting justice. He wanted Julia to see not just the end of their marriage, but the consequences of her choices in a way she would never forget. And in the quiet of those nights, as Julia slept in their bedroom alone, Ryan was already drafting his revenge. A revenge not born of violence or reckless rage, but of precision, patience, and the kind of impact that would make Julia regret the day she let Trevor into their home. Because Ryan had learned something crucial. Silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. And Julia was about to discover that her husband's silence was the loudest warning she'd ever ignored. The days that followed felt like a tense game of chess, and Ryan was no longer playing defense. He had moved into strategy mode, watching Julia's every move while silently positioning himself for a devastating checkmate. Julia thought the worst was over. She mistook his silence for hesitation, maybe even forgiveness slowly building. She doubled her efforts to play the role of the doting wife again. Each morning, she cooked pancakes or scrambled eggs, placing them on the table with a hopeful smile. "We can fix this, Ryan," she whispered one morning, her eyes begging. "We're stronger than one mistake." But Ryan saw it all for what it was: performance. Behind those eyes, he caught flickers of guilt she couldn't fully hide, and his phone in his pocket buzzed with proof she hadn't cut Trevor off at all. Just 2 nights earlier, Julia had sent Trevor a late-night message. "I can't stop thinking about you. I just need time to figure things out." Time. That was exactly what Ryan was giving her. Not to fix the marriage, but to hang herself with her own words. His plan started with documentation. Each day, he gathered pieces of her betrayal. Bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals, gym check-ins that coincided with Trevor's schedule, text screenshots that could crush any illusion of just one mistake. He built a folder, private and meticulous, knowing that when the moment came, Julia wouldn't be able to deny a single thing. But revenge wasn't just about catching her in lies. It was about exposing the truth in a way that shattered her carefully curated image. Julia prided herself on being admired, both personally and professionally. She boasted to friends about her perfect marriage, flaunted pictures online of weekend getaways, candlelit dinners, anniversary gifts. She loved being envied. Ryan knew that when her double life came crashing down, it had to be public, undeniable, unforgettable. At work, Ryan threw himself into projects, channeling his anger into productivity. Colleagues praised his focus, unaware of the storm raging inside him. Each night, he came home, kept his distance, and watched Julia squirm in the silence. Sometimes she would follow him into the guest room, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Ryan, say something. Scream at me. Hate me. Just don't shut me out." But he would simply look at her, his expression unreadable, then turn back to his laptop or notes. That coldness was deliberate. It chipped away at her control. She thrived on reaction, on attention, even if it was anger. His refusal to give her that satisfaction left her desperate. One evening, Ryan planted the first seed of his revenge. They sat at the dinner table, Julia forcing small talk about her day. Ryan interrupted her mid-sentence, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Do you remember our wedding vows, Julia?" She froze, fork clattering onto her plate. "Of course I do." He leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "Do you remember promising loyalty, honesty, choosing me every day?" Julia's lip trembled. "Yes, Ryan." He cut her off with a quiet laugh, bitter and cold. "Strange, because the woman I saw on our couch last week didn't look like someone who remembered." The color drained from her face. She reached across the table, but he pulled his hand back before she touched him. "Ryan, I swear, I ended it. It was stupid, reckless, but it's done. Please, don't throw us away over a mistake." He tilted his head. "Don't worry, Julia. I'm not throwing anything away." Her eyes lit with a spark of hope. "You mean you'll give me another chance?" Ryan smirked. "No, I mean I'll let you throw it all away yourself." Julia didn't understand the weight of those words yet, but soon she would. Behind the scenes, Ryan had begun meeting with a lawyer. The folder of evidence he'd been compiling wasn't just for closure. It was for leverage. Divorce was inevitable, but Ryan wanted control over how it unfolded. He wanted Julia to realize that every ounce of power she thought she held was gone. To make matters worse for her, Ryan also reached out discreetly to her closest friend, Emily, a woman who had always been skeptical of Julia's choices. Over coffee, Ryan let a carefully chosen piece of evidence slip, a screenshot of Julia's late-night text to Trevor. He didn't push the story further, just allowed Emily's shock to grow roots. He knew word would spread naturally among Julia's circle, and when it did, her reputation would crumble. At home, Julia sensed something changing. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she felt Ryan slipping further away, not just emotionally, but in ways she couldn't control. She'd wake up in the night and find him gone, only to hear his car pull into the driveway hours later. She asked questions, but he gave vague answers. The uncertainty gnawed at her. One Saturday morning, Julia tried again, cornering him in the kitchen. "Tell me what you want from me, Ryan. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, you name it. Just don't give up on us." Ryan set his coffee mug down, his eyes unreadable. "You'll know what I want soon enough." The chill in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. For the first time, Julia, so used to manipulating situations to her advantage, felt a loss of control. And Ryan, calm and patient, was savoring that shift. The man she thought she could fool had transformed. He was no longer the husband waiting at the dinner table with flowers, no longer the man rushing home to share every part of his day. He was someone she couldn't read, someone who held secrets of his own. And as Julia scrambled to regain his trust, Ryan's revenge clock ticked closer to midnight. She didn't know it yet, but the stage was nearly set. The moment Ryan chose to reveal his cards was deliberate. He waited, watched, and timed everything so Julia would never see it coming. He wanted her to feel the weight of her choices in one crushing blow. Not just a private conversation, not just a divorce paper slipped across the table. He wanted it undeniable. It began on a Sunday afternoon. Julia had arranged for her parents and a few friends to come over for brunch, a gathering she often loved hosting because it gave her a chance to flaunt the image of a happy home. She dressed in a soft blue sundress, her hair curled, her smile forced but ready. She hoped that showing a united front would convince Ryan that what they had could still be salvaged. But Ryan had prepared differently. When the guests arrived, he played his role well. Polite smiles, light conversations, pouring coffee into mugs as though nothing was wrong. Julia relaxed for a brief moment, convincing herself maybe his coldness was thawing. She even leaned toward him, brushing her hand against his arm as she introduced him to one of her co-workers. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away, but his stillness carried something dangerous, like the calm before a storm. And then, just as the group settled into the living room, Ryan stood up, his voice steady. "There's something important I need to share," he began, glancing around the room. "Julia and I built this home on vows, honesty, loyalty, trust. But lately, I've learned that not everything here is what it seems." Julia stiffened, her smile faltering. "Ryan, maybe this isn't the—" He raised a hand to silence her, his tone sharp yet calm. "You've always been proud of appearances, Julia. So it's only fair the truth gets its moment too." He pulled a folder from under the coffee table, a neat stack of photos, bank statements, and printed text messages. He set it down on the table where everyone could see. Gasps rippled through the room as Julia's friends and family leaned forward, scanning the evidence. One by one, their expressions shifted: shock, confusion, then disgust. Julia's face drained of color as she stammered, reaching for the papers. "Ryan, please, not like this." But it was too late. Her friend Emily, who already knew pieces of the story, shook her head. "Julia, how could you?" Her parents sat frozen, her mother covering her mouth, her father staring at her with disappointment that cut deeper than any words. Ryan didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply said, "For months, Julia has been lying, sneaking behind my back, inviting another man into our lives while I worked to build a future with her. And I'm done being silent." Julia broke then, tears sliding down her cheeks as she begged. "Ryan, please, we can fix this. Just don't humiliate me like this." But humiliation was exactly what she had dealt in the day he found her on their couch. And now, it was returned with precision. The room fell into an awkward hush. One by one, people made excuses to leave, muttering polite goodbyes while avoiding Julia's gaze. Within minutes, the house was empty except for the two of them. Julia collapsed on a sofa, shaking. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this in front of everyone?" Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Because lies thrive in the dark. You embarrassed me in my own home, Julia. I just made sure the truth saw daylight." For the next week, the fallout grew. Friends stopped answering Julia's calls. Her parents withdrew, disappointed and ashamed. Even at her workplace, whispers spread. Emily had made sure the evidence reached the right ears. Julia's perfect image shattered, and everywhere she went, she carried the invisible weight of judgment. Ryan, meanwhile, moved forward with finality. He filed for divorce, backed by his meticulous evidence. The process was swift, uncontested, and left Julia with little ground to fight on. She tried to plead with him behind closed doors, promising to cut Trevor out, promising to change, but Ryan's silence remained his sharpest weapon. On the day the papers were signed, Julia broke down in the courthouse hallway. "I thought you loved me enough to forgive me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan looked at her for the last time, his expression calm, resolute. "I did love you, Julia. Enough to give you everything. But you love yourself more than us. And now, you get to live with that choice." He walked away, leaving her standing alone in the sterile hall, clutching the empty promise of what could have been. For Ryan, the revenge wasn't about destroying her completely. It was about reclaiming his dignity, his power, his life. Julia would carry the scar of exposure, the memory of that Sunday where every mask she wore was ripped away. And Ryan? He carried no bitterness, only clarity. In the months that followed, he rebuilt himself. He spent more time with friends, traveled for work, even picked up hobbies he had once set aside. Woodworking, running marathons, quiet evenings with books instead of forced small talk. He wasn't searching for love yet, but he was open to the possibility, with sharper eyes and a stronger heart. The lesson carved into him was simple yet permanent. Betrayal loses its power when truth is revealed. And the strongest revenge isn't rage, it's control. Julia once thought Ryan would always be her safe place, her steady hand. Instead, he became the man who taught her what happens when loyalty is traded for selfishness. And in the silence of their empty house, long after Ryan was gone, Julia finally understood. Some mistakes can't be undone, and some people never get a second chance.